Greetings everyone, Manley here. I hope you're doing great, and with everything that you're going through, I trust that like me, you're choosing to live out an attitude of gratitude. Slightly different surrounding to usual. I'm out and about for my walk, but I thought I'd reflect on some recent thoughts from Jacob Collier. Let's just get into it. Let's check it out.
Early in your career, we positioned as this like creative genius, like
prodigy kids.
Prodigy. Yeah. Was there added layer of pressure to perform in that show where Quincy and Herbie are like, here's the guy. Like, here he is.
I think so. I think there was an amount of that. It's funny. I've been sort of cited as a prodigy kid for like a lot of my life.
Yeah.
Like from way earlier than YouTube and all of that. It was kind of like, oh, Jacob, the kid who can blah blah blah. I think it's a label that's quite a tidy way of people understanding you. It's in a sense, it's quite an impersonal thing to tell someone. Like, oh my God, you're such a genius. That like there's
and I'm just gonna come in there. Yeah, I can definitely appreciate what you're saying there. Because, you know, for those who don't understand, you know, what on earth he's doing musically, it is a very convenient label, you know, to put to him and to others, and to kind of leave it there as opposed to delving in to understanding more about the individual. I can appreciate what you're saying there 100%.
Bridge there. You can't meet a person if they're a genius. It's like kicking them up into the sky and be like, you can just be up there.
Yeah.
I'm going to be here. But it's far harder to meet someone where they are and say, you are a flawed human being just like me, and you also have this big world of yours, and I respect that.
Yeah.
That's like to call someone a genius or a prodigy is to kind of write them off as outside your understanding, beyond your understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that a lot of creative people actually.
And this is why, and one thing that I love doing is breaking down the stuff that he's doing and other artists as well, musically, in a way that's very palatable, you know, because a lot of this stuff can be broken down in a way that doesn't need to feel like, oh, wow, you know, not to say it's not amazing, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that you can't also step into their shoes to an extent pertaining to certain musical ideas, and glean understanding and knowledge for yourself. That's one reason why I'm really grateful for this channel, to be honest, and you know, the music that I've been able to analyze and create for you guys. So yeah.
Require to grow like any good plant is to be really like seen and understood, and to say so someone's a genius is to say I refuse to try and understand you. You're just outside my reach.
Very
but I've learned to translate that as. I really, you know, I see you and I respect what you're doing, which is, I think, sometimes what people mean. But I think
that's definitely a positive stance to take from it, Jacob, without a doubt.
At that time, I think that there's been pressure for that all the time, and there is still now a little bit. But I enjoy the process of gradually, deconstructing the scaffolding around this idea that I'm somehow supernatural. You know, I'm like really. Natural. I'm not that supernatural, and I'm just a mucky old human. But I'm deeply interested in certain things, and I think it's important that it's like it doesn't feel. I feel very strongly whenever I speak about music or play music or write it that people don't feel like it's this magic power that comes from. It's like only a few people have access to it. Like anyone can access that part of themselves, whether it's in music or in other aspects of life. It's a lot more about. Comfort.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was talking about.
You know, feeling comfortable and confident and having permission to make mistakes and be cool with yourself being weird and all that stuff. It's much more about that than it is about like discipline, at least for me. You know, like I think some of my greatest gifts come from that side of things, not actually from being technical. So I think in the early days, a lot of the tide that I found myself kind of unconsciously or consciously pushing against was like this idea that I was like an intellectual feat. When I looked at the things I was making and I was like, no, you guys, you haven't got it. Like this is an emotional presentation for me. Every single thing about this has a purpose and it's proportioned. Everything about this is like coming from here. But because I can also think quickly and I can solve problems in interesting ways and I like to talk about it. I think there was a period where it was kind of like, oh, Jacob is the kid who wants to just think, you know, but and that's cool. You can kind of think whatever you want in a sense about anyone, but I think for me, I definitely knew that wasn't the underlying truth for me. And as the years have gone on, I've enjoyed expanding both sides.
Interesting.
But I do think of one of the most like some of the happiest I ever feel some of the most present I ever feel is not when I'm all up on the pedestal and I'm looking great and I'm feeling, what Grammys or whatever I'm supposed to be. It's when I'm, say, conducting an audience of 5,000 and my voice is as big as...
And that's a common theme, That's a common theme that, the pedestal can be very dangerous, for many people, pertaining to, in this case, we're looking at music specifically, and this is a gentleman who's, got multiple, Grammys, etc. And he's happy, directing small groups of people, and it's not an issue. It's not an issue at all. And I think that's an important thing to remember, that, putting people on pedestals, from the outside perspective, as Jacob was alluding to, can be quite an easy and convenient way to basically say that, I don't understand you and we're going to put you up there. But at the same time, he's really talking about the humanity, that he obviously has as a human being in this world, and finding his place, musically, yes, in ways that are, highly respected, etc. But knowing that at the same time he's a human just like us, obviously. But I think that's a really important point to make, that he's making there, that, it's not just about the highs, it's about the times that the lights aren't on you, that for him, those are important things, very important things for him, very, very important moments for him. And I would probably say that a lot of those moments are, as captured, in his room, how, the whole YouTube videos in the early days, that he put out, all those early moments, that's what have really built him up to this point of where he is now, So yeah, very, very interesting to know that, behind all the lights, the cameras, the action, all that stuff, that, Jacob is more than happy just directing or even, singing Bach chorales, with his family.
Everybody else's voice, and they come with me, they lift me up, I lift them up. That feels balanced to me. And this idea of me being this like superior force or like whatever, like I understand why why that comes about. But that just it's not helpful to me to believe it.
Interesting.
I don't know if you agree
Very
with this, but I feel like one of your greatest superpowers as an artist is your enthusiasm for the craft and for music. And I think to say prodigy or genius underscores how much you potentially like it. Like I think the contagious nature of your art, for me, is what draws me in, even though I don't understand when I hear you speak about music.
Yeah.
But your interest in it, how obsessed it seems like you are and how much you love it, is what makes me drawn to it. And I find that that's something for me across many artists. Like if someone truly loves it.
Yeah.
And that's great, because Jacob doesn't just speak to musicians, he speaks to the world at large. Yeah.
I'm more likely to want to like it with them and be a part of it.
Yeah.
There's a clip on the internet of a kid, and I think it's from a Patreon live stream that you did.
What's your favorite chord?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. What's your favorite chord? Yeah,
it's one of the cutest clips ever. But your interaction is like the most pure kind of, it feels like you guys are seeing each other at eye level and you're experiencing the same childlike wonder that he is in like playing that chord. Like that I don't know why I'm so enamored by that clip, but I've watched that clip so many times over.
That's so nice.
It's such a beautiful moment.
Yeah, children are the wisest among us, I think. And sometimes a child will cut through with a question like that, and it's just like, oh yeah, that's all that actually exists.
All that matters.
That's literally all that matters.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
There's one thing that you keep bringing up now, these like the audience choirs, which have become such a big part of what you do, your live performance, where it almost feels like it shouldn't work, that all these people shouldn't be able to sing. But you're conducting the audience in a way that's making this like beautiful melody. And I want to come back to this concept that you brought up, which was that contribution requires comfort, that like your comfort on stage over years, the repetition of that is what created this ability to recognize, how can I think about this differently?
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a really important note for a lot of creatives to be like, hey, you can innovate and do something really unique to yourself. But first, just get comfortable in the flow of it. Like get comfortable in the repetition of it.
Well, I think the key thing there is being comfortable with not knowing what's going to happen next. That's the thing. It's not like
All right. That literally goes back to what you were saying about children, you know, essentially the kind of superpower that they have. And a big part of that, you know, I think goes down to the fact that as we grow and develop, you know, we can often hold on to a lot of, you know, concern that is, you know, far removed from a child, you know, naturally. You're just concerned about just many things, you know. And, you know, I think that's definitely a beauty in children, you know, that they're able to enjoy life for what, you know, for the present, the gift of the present. And I love what Jacob's about to touch here in terms of, you know, being in the moment and enjoying the process, you know, of life and not thinking too much, you know. Yeah, I think that's great. That's great for any creative. Yeah.
Big plush cushions and live in a cloud, you know. It's like, it's be cool with not knowing the next move. And like, if you can figure out,
and you have to, yeah, just on that point as well, you know, you have to kind of make peace with that, you know, in life, you know, because tomorrow, the next moment is not, you know, it's not promised. You know, the next moment in our lives is not promised. What I just said just now, you know, was essentially in the future when I first started this video, and now it's in the past, just like that, you know. So this is so good, man, and it really helps to have a greater understanding behind the person behind the music. In this case, it's Mr. Jacob Collier. So yeah, this is great. This is great.
How to get a kick out of that, then you've like figured a lot of life out, because no one knows what's going on right now at all, and there are not solutions to some of the biggest problems on the planet right now, and everyone's uncertain and afraid, and no one knows what's going on and all this stuff. So it's like, if you can figure out how to be comfortable with that, with all the friction.
And that's what I'm saying about making peace, yeah, amid uncertainty, yeah.
And to alchemize that in your work and in your life, then that's a beautiful thing. I was hanging out with Herbie Hancock yesterday, and he was talking about Buddhism, which is a huge part of his life, and how in Buddhism, one of the greatest teachings that he holds true for him is like, you know, it's his job, his duty, he could say, is to find the lesson in everything. You know, so for example, he was talking about COVID and how he, you know, went into COVID, you know, not knowing why this was happening and what there was to learn. And he really realized, well, what I've learned from COVID is that there's only one family. He says there's only one family on the planet, and it's all of us people. It's where all of us are affected, no matter who we are, who we worship, who we love. COVID is affecting us all. And that hit him really hard, and he was able to understand that. And that's one example for him. That was his.
Oh yeah, that's true. COVID definitely affected everyone. Yeah.
But I think that happens constantly in life. You know, you're presented with a challenge or a friction or whatever. And if you're averse to those things, then life can be really hard, because you make a lot more suffering for yourself than is necessary.
That's another Buddhist principle, which is that all of life is suffering, and all of suffering is preference.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Which is an amazing concept.
The thing that people don't tell you this, but you get to make the world.
Mm-hmm.
You make it.
Yeah.
There's evidence for whatever you believe. You get to make your own world. And I mean, I love that, because I'm a world builder, and I think of myself as that, and it appeals to me greatly. I love the idea that you make your own world, but it's so true. And, you know, like, yes, I'm a fraud. Yes, I don't know what's going to happen next. Yes, I am. Everyone's lost right now. Yes, the world is ending, you know. On the other side, if you look for love in anything, you'll find it. And if you expect to see love in something, then it's there. And everything, grief, fear, anger, despair, any level of that, it's all love in disguise. It's all people trying to love, but they just can't quite get it out right, you know. And it's just, you watch all these blundering world leaders right now being like, oh, and it's with such devastating consequences in so many ways. And you just think everyone is just trying to love. That's the truth, because there's nothing else to live for. Sometimes you have to look really hard to remember that, you know, in this behavior is somebody who's so in need of love, and so looking for, it's like they love a part of themselves that destroys, or they love the feeling of power or lording over and all these things. And it's happened since the dawn of time, and now is a very prevalent time for all those forces. But it's like you honestly get to decide what the world is for and where you are in it. You get to make those decisions. And whether it's on the biggest levels, on the smallest levels of life, the minutiae, whatever, it's like it's honestly up to you.
I totally agree with that. And I think that exploration of like, to like express love and also to receive love, a lot of creatives, as they go through their journey, their motivation is connected to some level of how they received.
Yeah, let me just jump in there a second. Pertaining to attitude, having an attitude of gratitude is something that I've spoken about many a time on my channel. And this is just regarding life in general. It's so important every day, to find things to be grateful for. If you look hard enough, they're there. They're all around us, regardless of what we're going through, because we all go through ups, we all go through downs in life, peaks and troughs. But at the end of the day, there's always something to be grateful for. Always, always, always.
Or didn't receive
love, yeah.
Right? Growing up. And there's elements of self-worth and elements of controlling your environment that a creative can tap into, where I can create this thing.
Or something that feels like the thing that I have or didn't have,
I know you've spoken about your upbringing, and I'm curious if there's elements of any of that tap into your motivation, because as we're having this conversation, it's very clear that your motivations were not necessarily connected to the traditional path of, I want to make it in the industry, I want fame, I want financial success, I want status. There was something else.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious about your...
And that's interesting, many musicians, will start at a young age. Not all, but many start at a young age, simply put, just wanting to just enjoy the language of music. They're not thinking, about the future, as he's alluding to there, Samir, in terms of financial success and etc. Obviously, all those things are very important, but often when one starts out, in many creative endeavors, it's for the love of that particular thing, and I think that's a really important thing to not forget, as we build and as we grow in life, but not to neglect the fact of just acknowledging basically where we've started from, and not to say that needs to dictate ultimately where we end. Obviously those things of in terms of financial stability, etc. That's all very important, but in the grand scheme of things, may we not forget the reason why we've started, in our creative endeavors.
Relationship with expressing love and receiving love as a kid, and how that connected to your
Charlie Kaufman, I think you say his name. Charlie Kaufman, the screenwriter. He's one of my favorite thinkers, and he talks about this idea. And I saw a video of him talking. He talks about like the ancient wound. We all have like an ancient wound.
Yep.
We've all got one. It's like the ancient wound is that we're alive in some ways.
Sure.
Oh my God. But yeah, for me growing up, I had two very different parents from each other. My mum is so creative, tapped in, open-minded. To me, I think that, there was certainly an amount of validation I felt like I deeply received. And then a part validation that I feel like I deeply didn't receive. And that unique combination, I think, resulted in me feeling very free and open, and also having this fire to be like, I want to give, I want to show, I want to get, I want to pull, I want to push, and all those forces. So I think every person at a certain point needs to.
And this is really important, in terms of childhood, Yeah, Jacob's given us some definitely clearer insights, behind the individual that many know him as, pertaining to the great master musician. This is really interesting,
to an amount of a peace with, this is just who I am. Like, I didn't decide how I was brought up. It's not up to me, and my job is to say, well, these are the cards I was dealt, and you can either sit and complain about it, or you can realize that there's always, it's kind of what Herbie was saying, there's always a way you can look at everything and extract fire from it in a sense. And so some of the pain of having parents that separate and all the layers of all of that, and being like part of you is being isolated, part of you is holding on, part of you is letting go, and then you're learning how to grow up and be a man in the world, and you're learning how to find your own voice. And figuring out friendships and relationships, all this stuff, I think it all comes down to some of those foundational years for all of us. And I'm really grateful for all of it, because I think that the combination of all those elements, though very complicated, especially at that time, has resulted in me being, having that fire and that desire and that magnetism towards things that feel like they're kind of, they're wild. I think a lot about wildness and tameness. And
going back to exactly what I said before, having an attitude of gratitude, regardless of what's happening in life, it's just so important to do that. It's so important to do that. It's so important to do that, regardless of what one is going through, to have an attitude of gratitude.
Important is to cultivate wildness as opposed to tameness. And
how do you do that?
What does that mean?
Well, it's interesting for me because a lot of my first creative experiments were done in solitude, in controlled environments, you could say, in the sense that I built my own world and cultivated it. But what I've found over the last 10 years of having a career in music and growing up as a human being and as a person in the world is that when things are let to be more in the wild, it's like you take off the collar and you let it run. You don't lose those things. They run back to you, but you gather fresh air and you gather perspective and you gather wisdom. And I resent the idea that art is pure if it's in any capacity. The idea that, oh, that's not pure, or you can't do it like that, or art must be made for this purpose or with this in mind, whether it's commercial or art or whatever it happens to be. I really think that something is wild when it's let loose on the world. And the last 10 years of my life, I think, has been a lot of me figuring out how to be comfortable in the wild, because
because even, thinking back to those initial YouTube videos, even when I first saw, Jacob Collier on the scene, between then and now, like it's such a vast span of difference, growth, and it's huge, it's massive, and it hasn't really taken that long, like a decade. It's not that long at all.
In my room for so many years making music, and I have loved the process of unraveling myself, and I'm still in the process of unraveling myself. But going back to what you were saying before, it's like finding that comfort, not just in the unknowing and in the question mark of the world, but comfort with all the parts of me, who I am, the parts of me that are strange or complicated or tangled up. We all have them, and there's something about massaging them and being like, I get it, I'm here. All the proportions, they all make sense, and giving yourself permission to be who you are. You has to start there. And that does go back to, for all of us, the kinds of attention, validation we received as children, the kinds of things we desired, the kinds of things that we experimented with, and then you find yourself in a situation where you're the sum of all your parts, and you have to accept that before you can, to allow yourself to grow.
I imagine. I know growing up as a young boy, like the approval of my father was a highly coveted.
Yeah. That currency is worth a lot.
It's worth a lot. Was that the same for you, or was it the inverse of, I'm going to find approval somewhere else?
Well, I think it's all of it, all the external validation you seek, I think, is all the primary validation in disguise, So I would say there's certainly an amount of, you could say, validation that I didn't traditionally receive from my father. And I think the same is true for a lot of people I love and respect.
Yeah.
This is very interesting. This is very deep. Very deep. Wow.
And that particular currency matters to a person. And I think that the way in which you grow without that fundamental approval, or what feels like approval, results in a certain kind of desire to find it elsewhere. But at the end of the day, you need to be everyone to yourself, in a sense.
Yeah.
You kind of need to be your own mother and father and best friend in life. And so I think a lot of growing up and the pain of that and the joy of that is finding ways to source that for yourself. And we all know the feeling. All of us at this table know the feeling of, oh my God, my video got 10 million hits or 100 million, whatever it happens to be. And you think, man, this feels pretty good, man. Woo! I feel validated right now. I did good. And for some people, it's like, I feel powerful. For some people, it's like, I feel seen. I think for me, it's probably I feel seen. That for me, that's a big one. It's like, well, you really, I presented a thing to you and you saw it. Like, well, I feel beautiful, right?
Jacob's sharing some very interesting nuggets here. Very interesting nuggets. Wow. And once again, it just shows the gentleman as a human being, you know? Wow. 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 Wow.
And for other people, it's I feel sexy, or it's I feel like I have control, or I feel destructive, or whatever. There's lots of ways you can increase your scale. But learning those proportions and how you respond is like a big part of learning who you are, figuring out who you are.
I feel like you've done a really good job of caring about the process and the present rather than maybe what you could be waiting for. Like I'm thinking about even Samir bringing up earlier that, 13 years ago, we thought the career would take 2 years. It took 13, but even then we didn't know what it would look like.
Yeah. Well, and in 13 years' time, you'll be saying it's taken 26 years.
Of course.
And we thought it would take 13, you know what I mean?
But we didn't even know we were waiting for this.
Now I don't
And
know.
you feel like you've released, I feel like you've really released that feeling of, I'm waiting for something to happen.
Right. Well, I think when you get a taste of being in a creative process and being present in that feeling and being in an idea, there is no better feeling than that. So what am I going to chase besides that? Nothing feels better than that. Being in the middle of a tornado of presence of your idea, and like, that feeling when you're like,
being in the present.
I think this might work. That feeling?
Yeah.
Wow, it's such a great feeling. Or being on stage and being like, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to do it. There's just that feeling is so
That's a great
special.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you feel that as well.
Yeah.
Why chase anything else?
Yeah.
Like anything that's not going to beget more of that feeling, I'm not interested in.
I think that's when like a creative becomes a creative, is when you recognize like you're very much unsure of what's next. Like you have a great quote. I don't remember exactly what it is, but about that you want life to surprise you. Like you want to leave space for life to surprise you.
Yes. Yeah.
And I very much resonate with that. Like it's just like, you say that of like in 13 years, we're going to say, man, it's taken 26, but I don't even know what 13 years from now looks like.
But you don't need to.
Because I've lived this 13 years where I couldn't have imagined that this is what it looked like. Yeah. So it's just like, it's the daily practice leads you to these interesting places.
Yeah.
Well. The journey of life in general. This was so interesting. And I hope that this has also given you an idea as well in terms of understanding further, in terms of the just the person of Jacob Collier, and also I trust as well that it can also act as a way to also help and support you in your life in general, as musicians, creatives, just humans in general. There's so many great takeaway points, but with it all said and done, I trust that today that you will choose to live out an attitude of gratitude today and always. Thank you for watching the video. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and don't forget, if you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. Take care, have a great rest of the day. Bye for now.